Hi everyone, this is Sumit from Labellerr. Enterprises to build and scale their AI-related product into the production. And now we are in today we are talking with Peeyush from CTO, VP of Engineering at Citizen. And now we would ask his journey and how he become a data scientist and what is his challenges that he face every day-to-day life. So welcome Peeyush, welcome to our
Thank
show.
you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So yeah, means to start with, we would love to understand your journey, your story, and what you just explained your journey so far and what you are doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give a quick summary of my journey over the last many years, more than 2 decades. I started as a software engineer early in my career, grew to leadership roles, and my initial part of the career was actually sort of experiencing the leading edge on the whole internet boom, the transformation of applications to the web, and then moving the stacks to the cloud, right? So these were sort of the three big things that happened. And over the last 10 years, data has become, the forefront because these systems now have started generating a lot of data, and people have started starting with analytics and now data science techniques to look at data and take better decisions, and sometimes even predict problems and solve them before they occur, right, or address them before they occur. So that has been sort of in the last 10 years, I've been focusing on data platforms and SaaS solutions that use data as their primary sort of tool to take business decisions and solve problems. Um, as a leader in this in the technology space around software, I've had to address these problems. I've had to build stacks, build teams, right, and processes to address and build these platforms. And therein is where I gained a lot of experience in uh, what does it take to build a data platform or a machine learning platform that uses data as a very very critical source to then build solutions around predictive and things that you can't see with traditional heuristics and rule-based systems, right? And one sort of advantage I've had, due to my past experiences, I've seen the evolution of traditional software, from the early 2000s, where we used to have, people used to write a lot of code. The cycles used to be year-long cycles, to a very open community today. A lot of open source, a lot of reusability and really agile processes, right? And a lot of automation around CI/CD orchestration and so on. So that world has evolved and has become very efficient. I mean, today to build a solution is very very easy around traditional software. The data science world and the data world is currently, in my opinion, in that state where software was in 2000s, early 2000s. And it is, while it is a very very popularly developing domain, but a lot of the underlying tools, technologies, infrastructure, processes are yet to evolve and become very very efficient. As a result, teams are spending a lot of time just plumbing, writing code, and not doing the actual data science work. So that's been my experience, and I've tried to solve this problem in my previous few companies. And as I mentioned to you, I'm working on a company that where this is going to be addressed as well.
Cool. So we just wanted to know more about your current company, Citizen. Means it sounds pretty interesting. The idea.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So Citizen is actually a healthcare data platform. And just to be, if viewers are going to research Citizen, it's Ciitizen, and that's the spelling of the company. And we actually recently got acquired by another company. So we've, just 2 weeks back we announced that acquisition. So now we are a part of a bigger company called Invite, which is another healthcare tech company. But at Citizen, the mission was to help patients get value from their own health data. And for those of you who are aware of the challenges in healthcare in the US and around the world, right, getting and using your own health data is extremely difficult. In the US, it can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to get your data and really, even get access to it. And using it is a whole different story, right? Because you get these documents and reports which you don't really understand. So the mission of Ciitizen was actually in some ways very simple and in some ways very complex, right? The simple was, in the way I'll explain it, is we will help our patients who are on our platform to get their healthcare documents, medical documents from the providers. Providers could be their doctors or hospitals or labs. And in today's world, while these are all digitized, they are all unstructured. They arrive in PDF forms, and they arrive in images, image forms, and so on. So it's not
Also,
structured
some
data.
CDs means some MRIs
Sometimes
and
in CDs.
CDs. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not a JSON or an XML,
Right.
like a fixed schema type thing which we can parse and we get the data out. We don't have that luxury, and therein lies the problem, because we have a process to get these documents very efficiently for the patients, but then we have to really provide the value to the patients from their data. We have to actually extract all the clinical context, clinical data out of these documents. So if you look at any document for that matter, right, there are two aspects to it. One is what you see and one is what you understand. And if you translate that to the AI and machine learning world or data science world, what you see is computer vision and what you understand is NLP. So we use both these techniques to actually see and understand the documents. And if you can imagine, even as a human, seeing and understanding a medical document is fairly challenging. So
Right.
to train a machine to do that is even more challenging, because there is no standardization, and it's really a very hard problem. And I think to I'll explain how we do it, but to cut to the end, right, we are probably one of the companies that have taken this solution to the most advanced stage today, I feel. And I think that's how we got a fairly good value of what we built with the company that actually bought us, right? So, so the way we look at, I mean, obviously there's a lot of details behind it, but when we get a document, we essentially do the OCR to get the text out of it. We also do computer vision classification model to categorize a document. Sometimes we find multiple documents combined together, so how to split them, and then using both signatures, right? So visual signatures as well as text signatures. We then break the documents into different sections, and then for each section, for example, if it's a medication section or a lab results section or a history section, history of present illness or family history. So then with that context, the NLP becomes more targeted, right? Because if you try to feed a large document to an NLP engine, it's going to produce garbage, right?
Right.
So we've taken innovative ways to, and we have filed about 15 patents around this whole thing. Uh, but we use these combined models to then go and really sort of break the problem down into sections, and then hone in like very domain specific NLP. Like for medications, we have one NLP engine. For cancer, we have another NLP engine, because the terminologies, the disease models are very different for each of these. So we have built that, and that's one of the IPs we have built. And so while building this whole pipeline, right, we have a team of about 8 to 10 data scientists, and a large part of our first uh, year to year and a half was spent in just sort of figuring out the infrastructure to do this. And so part of my learning is around that. And even today, I would say that we are not fully there yet, because uh, you know for our solution, using closed platforms like SageMakers, etc., or Google was not an option. They are closed platforms. We wanted to use best of breed NLP libraries or computer vision models. Uh, and if you use open source, then we have to stitch everything together, build the pipelines, right? So there were those kind of challenges. And data scientists are not software engineers.
Right.
So expecting them to really write code and build the pipelines that was not possible. So we had to actually hire a new set of people, software engineers and data engineers and so on, to build these pipelines, which pretty much doubled our budget for this solution. So that's a quick summary of what we do. At the end of the pipeline, we actually are able to extract individual entities like cancer stage, histologic type, or medications or procedures, with the values, dates. So it's a very, very complex problem that we're trying to solve. But I think we have pushed the envelope to about 80% now in most of these things, which is
Yeah, I
actually
mean, in most of the AI, healthcare AI product development, their product manager, their main issue is to collecting the data.
yeah.
That how to surpass this regulations and privacy and all those kind of stuff. So start making your product. So means
Right.
like step zero is the biggest problem. But when we
Exactly.
cross the step zero and we start doing this pipeline, the data preparation, then EDA, then model building, then training the model, then deploying it to the deploying it to then do the complete MLOps. In those process, what is the biggest challenge for means if as I would ask you as a healthcare based AI product, then what is the biggest challenge technology wise in this?
Yeah, so I think with the data itself, right? So getting the data is just the first step. Then managing the data is, I think, very shortly follows, which is non-trivial. Again, you have lots of data, you have sensitive data, you have to keep it secure. You have to sometimes remove the PII, de-identify it for certain use cases. You also have to maintain different versions of the data because data is not static; it keeps changing. It gets transformed. So there's a whole data pipeline before even it gets to the model training, etc. Right. So that's the first part of the pipeline that we built, right? And of course, under this there is like open source tools, MLOps, orchestration, right? All those things come into it. Then you get into the model training and experiment management again. So most data scientists end up using a Jupyter notebook, which is really a prototyping tool. It is not a production quality, production level IDE. So now to sort of really graduate a data scientist to from using a Jupyter notebook to saying, okay, I want to know what features you used in your experiments. I want to see the results, and can you justify why the model that you're proposing is going to be the most optimal model, right? And so there are some open source technologies available, MLOps, Kubeflow, etc., that allow you to do that. But to deploy them and integrate them and build the pipelines, it takes months, right? It takes months to develop that, and by that time, the data scientist continues to use a Jupyter notebook and just do some local experiments, and nobody knows what's going on at that point. Then you get into the model serving, and this is again, the data scientists don't know how to really build a service or a REST API around that, and most of them are not used to the newer tools like Seldon Core and some of these. Kubeflow also has a serving module, but while the tools are available, stitching them and using them is a whole different ballgame. And for that, you really have to train new engineers and bring them into the picture. So all in all, by the time you get your pipeline well oiled and complete, it is about 6 months to 1 year, right? Easily that goes by. And then, as you said, then you start actually seeing what you're building in real life. Because till now you're working on more your local environments, your data is on your laptops, your models are on your Jupyter notebook, and really nothing is getting served. You're just doing your F1 scores and accuracy and those kind of things, which in isolation, they don't mean anything. It's like running a unit test and saying, I have unit test coverage of 90%. But when you put that in production, running the whole, CI/CD and those things reveal the real, right? So these have been the challenges, really, right? And I think, in my opinion, currently, in general, making the data science workflows more efficient and the removing the requirement for data scientists to code a lot of production quality stuff, right, in Python or whichever language they're using, is a barrier today. It takes the cycle time to be that 1 year, 1.5 years type thing. before you can see value. And I think that's a big barrier today in the data science world.
Cool. So means you just mentioned that in the production level, there's a whole lot of new challenge that you have not seen in the experimentation,
Yeah.
module. So how you overcome those challenges? Means most of the people, they discuss that this is a production is another ballgame.
Right.
Deploying it. So how you
Yeah.
overcome that?
Yeah. So if you just think simply, right? So you've created a model and you've done your experimentation. You have a thesis saying that, okay, I think this is the most optimal model, right? So when you put that into production, you need to monitor that model, right? In traditional software, when you put the software into production, you monitor it. You don't deploy it and forget about it, right? You have to monitor it. You have to see whether it's up, whether there are any bugs. So in a similar way, machine learning model needs to be monitored. So you need to monitor what data it is seeing, what inference it is doing, right? And capture that and push that back into your pipeline in near real time, right? Not everything needs to be like in real time, but you need to have a very iterative cycle of looking at that data and seeing whether data is drifting, right? You trained on this type of data, but the actual data it is seeing is completely different. Then you need to take corrective actions, right? You need to fix your data that you're using for training. Or sometimes the model starts drifting, right, based on biases and so on. It may be trained on biased data or whatever. So that's a feedback loop. And at Ciitizen, we have actually implemented a feedback loop. We call it active learning, right? Which again took a long time for us to deploy and build, but it is there now. And this is sort of near real-time monitoring of the model, right? So that's one part. The second part is you're monitoring the model, but you also need to create a context around what this model is doing for your business, right? Because the software may be running and your model is being served, but is it really solving the problem it was meant to solve in the first place, right? So for example, at Ciitizen, the model was supposed to automate our extraction process from the documents, right? Now, I'll take a simple example. Initially, we sort of built a model for high recall and low accuracy because we said, oh, let's just find everything that we can find in the documents. The problem that it created downstream was the people who were reviewing the data for final approval, they had to deal with a lot more data, and that cycle time took a long time because medical data, you cannot just say, oh, my machine is performing at 90% and I'm not even going to look at it, right? So with healthcare data, this is one challenge. When I'm telling you that this is your data, it better be 100% accurate. So you need a human in the loop to review it and approve it. But if you're going to throw thousands of records at a human, it's going to take more time. So that was one issue. Then now we are sort of converting that to high precision and low recall and very targeted for certain sections. So now the numbers are now reducing and our cycles are getting more and more efficient. So now we are actually seeing the real business value, right? The earlier inference that we were doing was, oh yeah, our machine learning models are doing great, but is it solving the problem it's supposed to solve? So that's the other part which people don't realize. And again, for most companies, and I also advise a bunch of startups that are trying to build data pipelines and machine learning pipelines, it takes about 2 years for them to get to this state of asking the right question around the AI or the data science solution. What is it doing for you, right? And so the earlier you can ask that question in the cycle, the earlier you will fix those things. Because if you take 2 years to build and then start asking questions, then 2 years have passed. Right. And this is the problem that most companies are facing today.
So right now means this is a product for B2C space.
Yeah, it's a B2B2C. It's a data platform. So on one side, it is consumers that onboard and we get their data. On the other side, we have researchers, pharmaceutical companies, or cancer research companies that run clinical trials. So they are the data consumers. They take the data after patients consent and they try to use that data to solve create drugs or create clinical trials or recruit patients for clinical trials, right? And then the producers of data are the patients, right? It's
Right.
their data. So it's a two-sided marketplace, so to speak.
So what do you think is enterprises understanding around AI in your geography? Means in US, how is it? Means how well they understand the AI, how it works, and all those kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty broad question. I would say that the way I would like to describe it right now is in the enterprise world, there are larger enterprises that have started AI initiatives within their business units, right? So everybody says, "Oh, we have all this data. What do we do with it? Right?
Right.
Let's hire some data scientists,"
Right.
and that's how it starts. So they hire the data scientists, and then the data scientists, as usual, do their prototyping and so on, and so that cycle starts from there, and then by the time they start looking at the value, it 2 years would be passing. So that's how most enterprises are adopting. The smaller companies, right? I mean, there are Fortune 1000 type enterprises, and then there are smaller companies. The smaller companies have even a bigger challenge because their data science teams are much smaller. They hire 8 to 10 people teams, and they are expected to build something with data. And again, they struggle initially with the setting up the pipelines and really setting up the whole monitoring and measurement system, right? Data management solution. So a lot of effort goes into that. Then there are some really advanced tech companies like Tesla or Uber or these kind of companies. Of course, Facebook and Google's are at a different league, but we won't count them. But there are companies that are using very, very specific tech around AI to build solutions. Like Tesla is obviously using it for self-driving. Uber is using it for various things as well. And so they have lots of money, lots of resources. Their AI teams are in hundreds, right? Data science teams are in hundreds. So they build everything on their own, right?
Right. Right.
So and they've already invested in that. So let's leave those aside. But the companies that are really trying to, the enterprises that are non these big tech companies, let's say if it's a bank or an insurance company or a fintech financial company, they are just starting to get these initiatives going. And as this problem, as they start deploying these solutions, the need for data scientists, the need for seamless tools and infrastructure around the data science pipelines, data management, and then the need for measuring the business value of these things.
Right.
These are all going to become very important in the next few years.
Right. Right. So yeah, means I think you have given enough insight around this, in your geography, that how the AI is adopting. So what do you think means in especially in healthcare space in next 5 years going to be like, about AI adoption in with the patient or with the hospitals and other regulatory authorities?
Yeah, healthcare is actually a very interesting domain in general, not just with respect to data science. But if you think about it, there is really cutting edge research and development happening on some very specific things. Like people are looking at a lot of imaging data to pinpoint a certain disease type, right? Like there are certain things like radiology images or X-rays or scans. Uh, those are being done for very specific, like you can identify if a person has cancer or not based on the image. That is being automated, and that's a very specific solution, and a lot of good work has happened there. Then there is work happening in the genomic side of things where people are now trying to predict based on the gene sequencing, what could be potential problems with
Predictive
patient.
disease.
Predictive, right? So yeah, so I'm advising a company that actually does prediction of a unborn child about these things based on the parents' genes and stuff like that. So it's very, very interesting stuff is happening in those very specific areas. Then there is a whole side of a patient care, right, which is the remote nowadays because of COVID, etc. There has been this remote management of patients. So there, a lot of the NLP and computer vision stuff is coming into picture, right? You want to analyze what patients is saying about them, and or the doctor is saying, and then extract the context of that and make clinical conclusions or records of that, right? So that's a whole different area. The third is just the clinical data, which is what Ciitizen is into. The challenge there is that the real deep data exists in documents, and it's not a structured thing, because the EMR systems in the US are completely closed, right? They are trying to open up using some regulations, but they only open up like the door a little bit, right? They don't open up and say, okay, this is the data, you can use it. And there are reasons for it. I don't think I want to get into that, but healthcare is a very complicated space. So there are multiple different varieties of solutions being developed, right? And so I think each of these people are now applying data science or machine learning techniques to solve certain problems, right? Purely around data, there is obviously the problem that we are trying to solve, which is taking unstructured documents and producing data. Then the next level problem will be taking the data and then sort of creating more like a correlation or a prediction model around around the patients. And that is not something that Ciitizen's mission is. It's to produce the data, but I'm sure there'll be other companies that will come out that will take that data and then build the predictive models around that data, or build correlation models that I think our founder gives an example that migraine and drinking wine have a correlation,
right.
something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So these are things that people won't discover until they have data with them and they start building correlation models. Right. So these are the different types of things that are going to happen. It's very, very wide. It's not right. Like in autonomous cars, we can say there are these 5 things that machine learning will do in autonomous cars. But in healthcare, it's like very, very wide. It can be used for various things.
Yeah, infinite variables are there, right?
Yeah.
So I think you have given us enough insight, Peeyush. Thank you for your time, and I hope we will discuss more on some other topic in coming months. Okay, so thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.